No, he may fail. As he vies for fame and glory, still he tries in each new story tale. Let's hail the Tuxedo and his
Tennessee Tuxedo had long been the star attraction at the Megapolis Zoo, but suddenly people weren't watching him anymore.
This is Mark Arnold, animation and comic book historian, and I am talking with Bradley Bolke, who happens to be doing a voice of a character named Jerboa Jump, which makes his first appearance in this cartoon called Aztec Antics.
Look at that, Chumley. A mouse getting more attention than me, Tennessee.
Bradley, can you tell me a little bit about how you got to be the voice of Jerboa and also of Chumley?
I replaced somebody who had already recorded a few shows, and they were looking for somebody that sounded like a character on an old radio show called Duffy's Tavern, and the character was Clifton Finnegan. And Clifton Finnegan was sort of a takeoff on Clifton Fadiman, who was a very erudite gentleman who was the moderator for a very cerebral radio show called Information Please. When we auditioned, they said whoever comes close to Finnegan gets the job. So as I say, Fadiman was a very erudite gentleman, and Finnegan, that's the way Chumley talked. He sounded just like Clifton Finnegan, not exactly too bright. And Jerboa Jump, he only appeared in a few shows, but I looked at him, he was sort of a smart guy. That's the way he talked, In fact, I think it comes out in the show here that he was from Brooklyn. That's sort of a Brooklyn type of character.
Of course.
Did you have, say, Bugs Bunny or something in mind when thinking of the voice for Jerboa? Or?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's the way. That's the way I figured he talked. A guy that, a little wise-ass guy.
He's leaving, Chumley.
And there's Chumley there on the screen right now. I understand in previous conversations with you that you actually weren't originally the voice for Chumley, that somebody else had recorded lines and then you came in and laid over your voice tracks over their voice?
That's right. Apparently they weren't satisfied with the first actor that did it. They auditioned a half a dozen actors, and they told us whoever we're going to choose the person who's closest to Finnegan gets the job. And it was the luck of the draw. They said, "Okay, Bradley, you're it." So we went in and I think we did about 4 or 5 shows, just wild lines, and we just dropped they timed them. They said this line is going to run about 2 seconds, ran it. And at that time, I had a built-in timer. I could figure out, down to the fraction of a second.
So, well, how did that work? I mean, you were doing your own timing, or did somebody help you with that, saying you got 30 seconds here?
Well, I mean, they timed it too. They timed it, but it's most of the time we hit it right on the head. But after that, it was we would record. We'd go into the studio and record, and in some cases, some of the actors were out of town doing other things, and so what they would do would go to a recording studio and mail in their parts, and then the engineer Ben Stern would edit it all together, and that's which was very arduous and very tedious. But if he got the talent, which he did, it comes out perfect.
Well, boys, I'm glad you bounced in.
Now, we're coming up on the scene here where Tennessee and Chumley have gone to see Mr. Whoopi, and it was a recurring theme in all these cartoons, and that was voiced by Larry Storch. Do you have any memories? Well, Larry Storch is still with us, of course, but of working with him?
Yeah, a very pleasant guy. Very pleasant guy. This was sort of a takeoff on the old actor Frank Morgan, who was the Wizard of Oz. And in fact, I was watching Turner Classic Movie the other day. They had Naughty Marietta with Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald, and also in the movie was Frank Morgan. And as he was reading his lines, I said, "Oh my God, that's Mr. Whoopi with the 3D BB." Oh, well. Let's see. Well, let's look at the 3D BB and see what they have to say.
It sounds like Larry Storch.
Indians had bows and arrows, while the other Indians had only clubs.
Now, it seems like the Total Television producers like to have characters kind of based on other famous celebrities, and seems like Don Adams' character was based on the actor William Powell. Is that correct?
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little more short and clipped, maybe, but there is kind of a similarity, I suppose, listening to The Thin Man.
They called their capital city Tenochtitlan.
What was Don Adams like as a person?
Well, he was an interesting sort of guy. Sort of, kind of withdrawn, but a very talented guy. And he was, he's just a very quiet, reserved, withdrawn individual. But he picked up his lines. He knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that, like, he and Larry were, like, boyhood chums. Is that correct?
That's what I understand. I think they grew up on the Upper West Side of New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. And you did touch on it a few minutes ago, but you said that sometimes they would Larry and Don would have to record lines, in the field, as it were.
If they were working out of town, if they were doing some sort of personal appearance out of town, they would go to record. The producer would mail the script, their lines. They'd go into a recording studio, do the lines wild, and mail the tape back to Aura Recording.
Mm-hmm. When it was a situation like that, how did you record your Chumley line?
You just record a wild. That's all. Or it's possible that somebody would read the other dialogue.
Okay.
So in other words, even if they weren't there, one of the other actors would give you something. They'd cue you. So this way you could read it with a little more feeling.
Oh, okay. But they wouldn't necessarily play the actual audio clip of Larry or Don.
No.
Okay,
No,
it was just another actor filling in. I get it. And then somebody would edit all the disparate commentary or whatever voices all together to make a cohesive storyline. Doing it that way, did you ever have any retakes or anything like that? If you got like the wrong inflection or anything like that?
Well, you always try to get as perfect as possible. If the director didn't think it was quite right, we do it over again. If the actor didn't think it was right, we do it over again. Mm-hmm. And once there's a meeting of the minds, then that's the final take.
Right. You worked with a number of other people that worked on these shows, and I was just curious. Kenny Delmar tended to narrate these episodes. Do you have any thoughts or memories about him?
Oh yeah, he was a nice guy. He was a very funny guy. In fact, my brother knew him before I did. My brother worked with him many years ago. Mm-hmm. He was probably one of the most successful radio announcers in radio, as well as a radio actor. Mm-hmm. He was a very successful radio performer before he went into television and other things. Okay. And I think he came from a show business family. He was a nice guy, very pleasant guy, and a funny guy, too.
Mm-hmm. I heard the story at the time when they hired Kenny that the producers were saying, we need a Kenny Delmar type. And this was for The 100 on the previous series they did, King Leonardo. And then they said, well, Kenny Delmar is still around. Why don't we just ask him? Oh, he wouldn't want to do it. And then they ended up using him, but he ended up being a valuable asset as he did voices for Tennessee Tuxedo and a number of the other.
Oh, yeah. He was a very, very versatile guy.
Mm-hmm.
There was an even newer attraction.
Stiff ready, folks, it's all free. Toss the balls at the funny faces.
That's about it on this cartoon. It's Aztec Antics. It was the 10th cartoon produced. And Bradley, I just want to thank you for talking to me today.
My pleasure.
Come on and see Tennessee Tuxedo. See Tennessee Tuxedo. Tennessee Tuxedo and his tail.